You are the son of an Israeli general. You were born in Jerusalem. You were part of that Israeli system. You were undoubtedly, probably as a child, someone who believed in Zionism. How is it and why is it that you came to this sort of different position?
Sure. So, like you said, I was born in a very Zionist family. My father, like you said, served was a general in the Israeli army. He was a young officer when Israel was established, and had a military career. And my grandfather was a signer of the Israeli Declaration of Independence. So I come from a Zionist family through and through. Many family members of mine had important positions prior to the establishing the state, and then once the state of Israel was established, and had a very strong impact and influence on what the state became and what the army became. And my transformation obviously was gradual, and I always say, major transformations, especially in terms of of how we view the world, usually come up as a result of a terrible tragedy, sadly. And so, although again I was pretty far along, but then in 1997, my sister's little girl was killed by Palestinians in an attack in Jerusalem, and that's precisely the type of experience that shakes you to the core and forces you to re-examine what you believe in, re-examine the truths you have been taught, and re-examine the reality in which you exist. And that's precisely what I did. And I ended up reaching out to Palestinians in Palestine and to Palestinians here in the United States. And thankfully, I was surrounded by and welcomed by Palestinians, again, both in the United States and in Palestine, although they had no reason to accept me and be so as warm as welcoming as they were. And gradually, they took me through this very difficult step of, realizing, first of all, that there are two opposite narratives, completely opposite narratives. They don't differ in detail or nuance. They differ fundamentally. And then, take me by the hand like a baby learning to walk, to slowly and gradually realize that the truth that I believed was the truth, or the truth that I was taught and that I believed in, was really a lie. And that the truth actually is on the other side of the story. The Palestinian story is the truth, and it's a very difficult thing to do, especially when you come from a kind of uber patriotic Zionist family like myself. And like you said, when I was young, of course I was a Zionist. I was looking forward to serving in the army. I was looking forward to presenting Israel and doing everything I can. I believed in it wholeheartedly. But then eventually the meeting with Palestinians, the discussions with Palestinians, and stepping on the ground into Palestine, realizing, as the title of my subtitle of my book is, Journey of an Israeli in Palestine. I realized that I was an Israeli, but I existed in Palestine. And of course, that book, The Journey, forced me, and it actually helps a lot of other people too when they read the book, to go through the process of understanding what's an Israeli, what is Israel, what is Palestine, and how do these things exist simultaneously, even though you've got these two fundamentally different narratives. So that was my story, and eventually, as you know, I am decidedly anti-Zionist. I don't support the Palestinian cause. I believe I am part of the Palestinian cause. I'm not in solidarity with Palestinian struggle. I participate in that's at least how I view myself. I participate in the Palestinian struggle, and so I believe it's my struggle as well. And so this is the trajectory. Now, Israel has been at it in terms of the media, for over 100 years. The Zionist movement invested heavily in the very, very early years, not only in connections with the media, but with, culturally and politically and every other way that they could to influence American and Western thinking in general. They didn't only do this in the U.S. And they, like I said, after 100 or so years, you get very good at this. And now you don't really need to convince an American politician to support Israel. It goes without saying, because they learned it in school, and they learned it in church, and they learned it in synagogue, and they learned it in whatever other activities they were part of as they were growing up. And And another thing that the Zionists learned very, very early on, particularly in America, is that all politics here is local. So in every city you go to, every mayor gets a trip to Israel funded by whatever, some Zionist organization, every police chief, every member of every city council, even the smallest cities in America, and on and on and on. So they invest heavily in this, and they have been for a very long time. So it goes without saying that you support Israel because that's what they've been taught, that's what they know, that's what they're comfortable with. It was interesting when Ahed Tamimi, if you remember a few years ago, a Palestinian girl with the big blonde hair was arrested, and really there was a lot of press. She really got a lot of press. Both she and her mother kept saying, well, the only reason they care about her is because she looks like them, because she has pale skin and big blonde hair. So they it's easy for Americans to associate with Israel because they see themselves in them. They see similar things. They see Europeans who are have taken over and, like you said, made the desert bloom and brought civilization, even though none of that is true. In fact, it's very easy to refute factually that Palestine was a thriving country and everything was stolen. Everything from money in the banks to produce in the fields to the entire cities that were built, entire institutions that were in place, ports, and on and on and on, that they stole. But the narrative is very effective, and there's the way that they present the narrative and the way that they invest in making sure that is the prevailing narrative in the West is very effective. And like I said, after 100 or so years, you get very, very good at this. Now go prove that they're wrong. Now go prove that what they're saying is a lie. It's a much harder task to prove that what somebody's saying is not true. And so that's why they're ahead of the game in this, in all of this. Zionism is a racist, genocidal ideology. That's the source of this. The movie about Golda Meir just came out, hailing her as some kind of a great hero. She was an ignorant, racist war criminal. And what do you think her ideology was, if it wasn't the same as this? And the people before her, and so on. This is fundamental to Zionism and to Zionist ideology. Otherwise, how could you possibly have over 2 million people dying of thirst, half an hour drive from Tel Aviv, where people are, on the beach and partying all day, not to mention how holding music festivals just outside the fence. You know what I mean? You have to be brought up. You have to believe firmly in this genocidal, racist, supremacist ideology to be able to function and to maintain and to live in that kind of a state and be part of that kind of society. Otherwise, you're an outcast. And we do know that there are a few people who stand up, and they are outcasts. They're completely outcasts. Anybody who stands with Palestinians, particularly in times like this, anybody who stands up against these genocidal tendencies and policies, and you look at the laws, you look at military operations going back to all the way to the beginning of the founding of the State of Israel. It's been massacre after massacre after massacre, savagery after savagery. And what's, I think, some kind of a, perhaps poetic justice, that this massive military force that, especially in America, people love to admire, this huge intelligence apparatus, which, again, people in America love to admire. Not the first, but, one of the only times that it was actually challenged, and it was challenged by a group of guerrilla fighters, not by a regular army, by any stretch of the imagination. It completely collapsed. I mean, the entire system collapsed. The entire intelligence apparatus collapsed, did not function. The military was nowhere to be found. Scores and scores, nobody really knows how many, but certainly more, at least 1,500, if not more, fighters from Gaza glided in, marched in, came by small ships in, and took over entire settlements.
The Israeli defense minister has said the Israeli government is fighting human animals and will treat the war as such. At the time that he announced a complete blockade of food, water, and electricity. In other words, it is a policy designed to destroy Gaza and the people who live there.
I think what we're seeing is a gangster who has been humiliated and is now taking vengeance by killing as many people as they can. I mean, there's clearly no military or strategic or any other, objective to the slaughter. It's a slaughter. It's a slaughter, again, a gangster who's been humiliated and is trying to make a point that they can still kill people. They are focusing on revenge, on vengeance, on just spilling as much Palestinian blood as possible. The vast majority of Palestinian resistance has got nothing to do with picking up arms. It has to do with other ways, civil disobedience and so on, which we've seen over, since Israel was established. And Israel has been paranoid about all forms of Palestinian resistance, killing writers, killing poets, killing artists, killing, clergy, killing intellectuals, and on and on and on. So it doesn't matter if you pick up a gun or you pick up a pen. If Israel doesn't like it, you will be targeted. And that's really the lesson over the last 75 years.